Have you ever experienced a night so chilling that the very air around you seems to thrum with unseen presence? Imagine a darkened home, the shadows shifting ever so slightly as a storm rages outside, thunder echoing like ominous laughter. In the depths of such a night, what would you do if you heard a voice calling your name from the darkness? Tonight, we delve into a harrowing tale that blurs the lines between reality and nightmare. A story shared by a man who found himself face to face with an unimaginable entity, one that not only whispered terrifying secrets, but also threatened to tear apart the very fabric of his sanity. Stay close and hold your breath as we explore the chilling events that unfolded on a seemingly ordinary night in Guadalajara, where laughter echoes from the shadows and darkness comes alive with sinister intent. This is a story you won't soon forget, and one that may make you question what truly lurks in the corners of your own home. Are you ready to uncover the truth? Then join me as we unravel the mystery behind the episode you should not listen to. February 25th, 2021. I remember this date vividly because it's the day before my birthday. On this day, Juan Carlos Alberto Cruz shared with us one of the stories that has had the most profound impact during the time our community, Grim Secrets. A story that since then, almost every day, someone has requested we narrate. I hesitated for a while because what happens in this story goes beyond what I would like to think is possible. The beings that inhabit this tale are ones I would prefer not to believe in. Yet, who am I to judge? I am increasingly open to the possibility of even the most incredible things. But I must reiterate, the possibility that the entities in the following story are near me, near you, is one I would rather not accept. The next is a story I don't want to believe in, one I urge you to take as mere entertainment, if possible. I ask for great discretion. And if you are Catholic, I must warn you that the following narrative may be quite intense due to some elements in its description. Turn off the lights, and as you know, you are listening to Grim Secrets. This occurs in Guadalajara, Jalisco, where I was born and raised. When I met my current wife, we were renting a place while discussing the down payment for a house. Several years later, we finally managed to do it. We moved to an older neighborhood that, in addition to being very quiet, had something I loved. It was filled with huge trees everywhere. This made it feel alive during the day and at night, gave it a mysterious and even eerie touch that I enjoyed so much. It was such an old neighborhood that the street lamps still had that warm orange tone, casting dim light and frequently burning out, which, instead of bothering us, enchanted us both. We have always been lovers of supernatural horror and mystery themes. Neither of us profess any religion, although we were both raised in Catholicism as children. For my part, I abandoned it during my adolescence, first out of rebellion and later out of conviction. When we started moving, it never crossed our minds that anything could go wrong. In fact, we expected the opposite. We always thought positively and felt fulfilled. After so much time, we could finally have our own home, especially since it was in a somewhat central location and very close to our jobs. But one day, suddenly, everything began. It was so abrupt, so unexpected that we didn't see it coming. It was a Friday just before dusk, and it had rained for most of the day. For many, Friday is synonymous with partying, staying up late, and drinking. For me, it marked the end of my work week and the chance to relax. I was walking home with my umbrella in hand, under a mass of black clouds, drizzle, strong winds, and thunder that announced the great storm approaching. I walked several blocks until I finally arrived. My wife greeted me with a kiss, as always, although this time it was a little less effusive since I was somewhat wet. All I wanted was to change my clothes, take a shower, and come down for dinner. It was for me the perfect night. A weekend where I could enjoy a fight with my wife while watching horror movies, cliché as it may sound. We had thunder, lightning, and rain in the background. Our cats, who had already eaten dinner, seemed to have relaxed so much with the sounds of the rain that they ended up falling asleep. This time, we wouldn't have them running around like they usually did. After dinner, we decided to go up to the balcony to watch the rain and smoke a cigarette. At that moment, it felt like something out of a movie. The storm was in full swing, shaking the trees from side to side. The lightning illuminated the sky until one flash lit up part of the street, and almost 2 seconds later, a thunderous sound from a lightning strike was so loud that it vibrated the windows of the entire house, almost shaking the surrounding homes. In an instant, everything was plunged into darkness. The power went out, and the rain intensified to the point where we could no longer see the houses across the street. The curtain of water that blocked our view became so dense that it seemed as if nothing lay behind it. Suddenly, a sound alerted us, the sound of the front door opening and closing as if something had entered. We turned to look at each other, both a bit nervous, until my partner asked me to check what had happened. We grabbed our phones and turned on the flashlight to go investigate. What we found wiped the nervous smile off our faces. Barely illuminated by our phones, we noticed small mud stains and puddles of water starting at the door and leading into the bedroom next to ours. At first, we thought it might somehow have been the cats, but deep down, we knew that wasn't possible. They wouldn't have opened the door. We had to accept the idea that someone else was inside the house, that someone had broken in for robbery or some other purpose. Although we were on the balcony, anyone who entered would have had to walk right past us. We tried to calm ourselves, gathering our courage to check that bedroom. We only used it as a closet for storing clothes. Apart from that, it was just a guest room. We illuminated every corner and found nothing. The stains ended a step away from the door and then vanished. We wanted to forget everything, to stop thinking about the terrifying possibilities, and we started mopping and cleaning. We returned to the balcony to try to calm ourselves because the darkness outside felt less sinister than what was inside. While we smoked several cigarettes, we tried to search for the most logical explanation possible. In the end, we decided that one of the hypotheses was surely what had happened. Of course, we only did this to reassure each other, as we were far from convinced. We pretended we weren't scared, as if that would truly remove our fear. We went to sleep, trying to forget the idea that someone had entered our house. Something woke me up, a sound that caught my attention from downstairs. It seemed like I heard someone calling my kitties. I thought it was my wife, so I just turned over to continue sleeping. But then I felt her there, asleep beside me. I felt a void in my stomach, my mouth went dry, and I froze completely for a moment because I kept hearing it. But this time it was followed by a muffled laugh, as if someone were covering their mouth to stifle a laugh. When I was finally able to move, I shook my wife to wake her up, but I couldn't. I admit that, even though I no longer considered myself Catholic, the first thing I thought was to get up and find a rosary and a crucifix we had stored in a box in the bedroom. We hadn't planned to place them anywhere, but a friend had gifted them to us when she learned we were moving. She said they were blessed and meant for our protection, but I was too scared. After thinking about it for a few minutes and no longer hearing noises, I dared to get up and head to the closet in the next bedroom to retrieve that cross. I took my phone and turned on the flashlight. I noticed the cats were looking toward the stairs. One of them began to growl, and I hugged it to bring it with me for the crucifix, at least so I wouldn't feel so alone. As I opened the box, I began to recall the prayers I had learned as a child in catechism. As I left the bedroom, the cat growled like crazy and jumped from my arms, running under the bed. By instinct, I directed my gaze toward the stairs and saw something, a figure coming up that I didn't dare to illuminate in the darkness. I believed I saw an image so terrifying, so bizarre, that even today it provokes an indescribable horror within me. A man, completely naked, covered in blood, and wearing a crown of thorns was climbing the stairs with long, hurried steps. I was paralyzed. It felt like I was going to fade away. It seemed to be a man, and at the same time, it looked like a figure that had come to life. It looked like a Christ figure I thought I recognized. The figure stopped a few meters away from me in the darkness, to which my eyes seemed to start adjusting. I was very scared to see it. It tilted its head to the left, then to the right, and then back to the center. "Are you praying to me?" it asked, and let out a laugh that I could barely hear. It spoke slowly and continued, "Come closer, my child. Do not fear. I am the Lamb of God. I am real. Put your hand in my side." What I was seeing could not be human. It could not be human because at the same time it said that last part, I saw it as if it were inserting its hand into a wound in its side and twisting it. It placed its left hand over its mouth. Its hand had a wound, and from it came a long, dark tongue that moved up and down. Then it began to laugh and said, "You are praying. I cannot help you. I do not know you." I cannot describe what I felt, but I froze in fear, paralyzed, rooted to the spot. My thoughts raced, and I don't remember how, but I made the sign of the cross with my fingers. I closed my eyes, thinking I was going to die. I was completely stunned. When I opened my eyes, I was still in the same place, and the figure had moved a few steps closer to me. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out of my mouth. The figure was bathed in a red light, and that was what terrified me. I could not stop staring at it. Its body appeared deformed. I wanted to close my eyes to erase that image from my memory, but I couldn't. In front of me, it smiled with its mouth full of rotten teeth, its breath filled with a stench that seemed to burn my nostrils. I felt dizzy. I felt like I was going to collapse. After what seemed like an eternity, my wife yelled my name, and suddenly everything faded away. The figure was gone. I don't know how long I remained standing in that position, but my wife woke me up with her voice. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" she asked. I turned and rushed toward her, hugging her and begging her to hold me tight. I told her what had happened and how I felt. The cats were terrified, running all over the place, and we struggled to calm them down. We sat on the bed and began to talk. 12:36. I described what I had seen, and she was pale. I could tell she was also frightened. We checked the house, the windows, the doors, but nothing appeared to be wrong. We took a few minutes to breathe and calm down, feeling the need to do something spiritual to cleanse the space. We found the rosary, lit a candle, and began praying for protection. After a few minutes, the unease subsided, and we felt a little more secure, although we decided to sleep with the lights on. I think my wife fell asleep before I did. I, on the other hand, was still in shock. I must have slept a little, but I woke up with a start. It was 4 in the morning, and the cats were in a frenzy, rushing down the stairs. I heard voices again, but this time they were stronger. I decided to go after the cats. As I went downstairs, I realized that the door was open. It was terrifying to find it ajar when we had locked it just before going to bed. I looked outside, and the storm had calmed down. The rain had finally stopped, and everything was eerily still. I closed the door and rushed back upstairs, where I found my wife, shaking with fear, watching something on her phone. It was a video of someone speaking about demonic entities and how they can deceive us into thinking they are divine beings. I must have turned pale. I remembered what I had seen and could not comprehend it. After we calmed down and convinced ourselves it had just been a nightmare, we managed to sleep until morning. My wife said she could hear the sound of children playing at a distance, but I thought it was just a product of her imagination. The next day, as I went to work, I received a text message from a friend asking if I was okay. He told me he had had the worst night of his life, that he felt something was wrong with the house he had just moved into, and that he had seen shadows that watched him from the corners of his house. I felt the chill run down my spine, but I didn't want to tell him what had happened to me. I just told him everything would be fine, that he should just pray and be careful. That night, my wife and I were terrified. We decided to stay up late to feel safer, and we put on a movie to distract us. But around 2 in the morning, I heard the same laughter again, and we quickly turned off the movie. At that moment, we felt like we were being watched again, and I was paralyzed with fear, refusing to let go of the hand of my wife, who also felt the same way. We decided to go downstairs to check the window, and there, outside, standing under the street lamp, we saw a figure staring at us. My wife began to cry, and I felt something within me urging me to take action. I was about to yell when the figure, as if hearing us, turned and started walking away, disappearing into the darkness. The next day, we decided to go to a church near our house and ask for help. We spoke with a priest and told him everything, and he offered to bless the house and advise us on what to do. That day, when the priest came over, he began blessing each corner of the house with holy water and making signs of the cross everywhere. He finished and told us we should not fear because those beings are created by God, but we should keep faith strong and always pray, especially when we feel something strange happening around us. 1646. We finally felt a little calmer after that. We started a ritual of blessing the house every night before going to bed. However, even after that day, we continued hearing noises, laughter, and whispers in the dark. Many days later, while we were resting, we decided to watch the film The Conjuring, a movie that recounts the story of a family haunted by entities. I couldn't believe how close the movie mirrored our own experience. While we watched, my wife fell asleep, and I kept hearing whispers again. I felt like they were closer and closer, and I began to feel dizzy. I turned off the movie and turned off the lights, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. That night, something unusual happened. My wife woke up to tell me she had had a very strange dream. In her dream, a little girl was asking her for help, and she could see her sad face. I was stunned. That same night, I also saw the figure again, and it told me, "Come closer, my child." I'll never forget how terrifying it was to have that experience. Every time I share the story, it brings back those feelings. We lived with fear for a long time, and while we managed to cope, there were nights when I would wake up feeling that figure beside me. My wife decided to reach out to a friend who practiced spiritual cleansing and could help us with this problem. After a few sessions with her friend, things started to get better. We felt lighter, and slowly, those experiences faded away. To this day, I cannot explain everything that happened. I can only tell you that I hope you never have to go through something like that. Always be aware of your surroundings and keep your spirits high. If you feel something strange, don't hesitate to ask for help. This was the episode you should not listen to.